Mover, Councillor Halale, seconded by Councillor Blackler. Thank you very much. So I'll put that to the meeting. All in favour, please say aye. Against? That's carried. Are there any declarations of interest? If no, then we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is review and approval of the previous PAR's minutes. And I'll open it up for any feedback from the members. It's great. I'm assuming that we've got none. There's nobody online. Renters online. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no errors or omissions, can I please call on a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Halale, seconded by Councillor Ryan. Thank you. So again, I'll put that to the meeting. All in favour, please say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the Treasury strategy for the 4th quarter, and I will hand over to Mr. Hope and Ms. Lyons to speak to this. Sorry, Ms. Nett, was my apologies. Sorry, Amanda. I'm just going to call you by your first names. It'll be much easier.
I think we'll start with the financial report before the Treasury one as well. So overall, we're a bit behind budget. Revenue is 6% behind budget. Expenditure is under budget, which is promising, 3% at the moment. But a lot of that is to do with timing and things that will be sorted out later. The operating deficit is 10.4 against a deficit of 9.3. So that's about $1 million or 11% higher than where we planned to be at the time. Balance sheet's pretty much as expected. And yeah, there's detailed explanations throughout for lower level detail. And we've tried to break down the other expenditure a lot more in this significant. The contractors' spend has been broken down by department. A lot of them are to do with timing differences. So like our budgets are just flatlined. The amount for the year is just divided by 12 months. So yeah, it can be up or down each month depending on where we're at with the project. Is there any questions?
Thank you. I'll open that up to the floor for questions. While people are having a think about that, I did have a couple of comments that I'd quite like to look into a little bit further after this meeting, perhaps report back to the next. But I think, Amanda, we spoke earlier about the similarity and the offset between the increase in financial revenue and the increase in financial costs, and I'm struggling to get my head around how, in the interest rate environment that we're in, if we're borrowing twice as much as we're lending, then I would have expected it to have been, you know, a significant difference. And I note on page 16 of the report, under financial costs, we're looking at an $892,000 cost over budget for June end. Yet at the end of March, we're sitting at about 500. And so I think I'd quite like to just get a better understanding of the weighted interest rate costs and the interest rate revenue and some of the timing of that.
Yep, I can talk about that now if you like. So this is also because our budget is the 12 months split evenly over, as opposed to the peaks and troughs in our lending and borrowing. So we have borrowed more than we expected to pretty much consistently throughout the period. We've been about 10 mil higher, so 10 mil at around 6% interest is the difference at the moment. And that's where we're expecting to be at 30 June. We budgeted to spend around the 6 mil, like an average around the 6% interest rates. So it's not really to do with the higher rates, although they're slightly higher, but not significantly. It's more to do with the flat 10 mil extra borrowing throughout the year. And in terms of the income side, there was a lot of new lending that wasn't expected that has popped up during the period. So like the extra $1 million to Observatory Village, some lending to Wayland and Marama Airfield. Waitaki District Health was meant to repay, and then we've actually kept that out, plus Observatory Village was expected to repay 1.5 as well. So there's a lot of extra lending in there at the higher rate. So about 3 mil extra at 8% accounts for about half of the increase in interest revenue. And then the higher rates being on average 2% higher on about half of the lending that we've got out. So about 15 mil makes up the extra 300 variance. So it's, yeah, a lot of different reasons.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really useful. Questions from the floor? No? Let's cover that. The other point in here that I note under other costs, and I was just talking to Mr. Hope about it, was the carbon credit cost associated with Project Reclaim. And I know that that's not something that we will resolve here today, but it is something that I will look to address, because I struggle to see how that can be imposed on the council as a liability when they're effectively just transferring from one site to another. So I'd like to look into that a little bit further also. Thank you. So if there are no further questions, could I please call on a mover and a seconder for accepting the financial report? Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. So I'll call on, I'll put that to the floor for approval. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Again, that is carried. Thank you very much. And we will now move to agenda item 4.2, which is the Treasury report in the right location this time around. And I will call on Ms. Nichols and Mr. Hope to speak to that.
Okay, so just a bit more detail about the debt and financial income situation that we were talking about just before. So the borrowings obviously we're sitting over 10%, 10 million higher throughout the year. It's currently sitting at 11.7 mil over where we expect it to be. And then the extra lending on the other side is over by 3.877. So this just shows the detailed breakdown of all of those line items and the income and expense to do with them. There's the detailed listing of the borrowing we have out to the individual independent entities against budget, so you can see where the specific extra lending is. And then in terms of the debt, we've got a detailed listing of how it's been utilised over the years since 2020. We've also added in the borrowing forecast out to 30 June. We're keeping an eye on that very closely. So obviously we're sitting at 61 mil at the date of this report, which is to 9 months to 31 March. Since then, on the 15th of April, we had 15 million rollover refinanced, and we also borrowed an extra 10 mil on top of that to see us through to June. So we've just outlined in the table at the bottom of page 25 where that is principally going to go. The top one, Project Reclaim, was pulled forward, going to be all happening before 30 June, but now there's a few months worth are going to happen right up till December, so not that whole 8 million will be spent. Hence why we've only borrowed 10 to get us through to June.
So just on that, because there was a question that I had, Project Reclaim's gone backwards. The 10 million that you've borrowed has effectively discounted that 8.55 million down to around about 2, which was spent, which gives you the difference between the 16,570 and the 10 that you've refinanced.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a really commendable approach, because historically we have borrowed money in anticipation of spending it only to put it in the bank at a lower rate. And so I think that that's a great example of how forecasting spending cash flows can really save you some money. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you, and thanks for that 16,570 kind of breakdown. I just wondered how that translates back to page 20 in that table there. What is our likely net position by June 30? with those, the 11 overrun at this point? Or is that 16,570 just a breakdown of what is in budget? Or is that additional lending?
So of that 16, we probably won't borrow the whole amount for project reclaim. So we're budgeting about 10 mil by 30 June. So that will be added to, on page 20, we're at current total borrowings at 31 March was 61,748. So we'll add another 10 mil onto that. So we'll be sitting at about 72 mil at 30 June. The budget for the full year was 50 mil. So it'll be about 20 mil, 22 mil above versus your 11.748 now.
So that the net position will be
$10 million worse than it is there, so about 18 mil, presuming we don't lend anymore.
okay.
I haven't banked on lending anymore, and if I did, I'd have to borrow more to do it. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
So that 70 odd mil will be about 3.5 million of interest annually. Is that how it works?
yeah, about 6% we're sitting at the moment. The rates there or thereabouts.
I note from that from the refinancing table on page 26, which I really appreciate going in there, that we were quite fortunate that we had some higher notes rolling off at the same time as we had that fantastic 0.65%, 1.5 million rolling off. And so given the slight reduction in costs, the weighted cost of the rollover is probably not that dissimilar to what it was prior, which is both well managed and fortuitous. I just wanted to also note while we were going through this paper that I picked up a small error, just in case anybody online or anybody else questions it. And so on page 20, we have a financial revenue figure of 1.862 million in the 9 months year to date. Everywhere else in the paper that's reflected as 1.662. So I'm assuming the 1.662 is right, and it's just been lost in translation. Other questions from the floor? Councillor McKay.
I know it's not perennial, but paying that amount in interest only, is there a program to actually start reducing that capital number so the interest rate reduces?
We have a repayment program on our loans, but at the same time, we are budgeting to increase consistently. Like if you remember the budgets for the 10-year plan and the annual plan that we're consulting on, the debt's just going to increase significantly over the next 10 years.
So the way the local government funding agency products work is they are not interest and principal based products. They are fixed term notes, which obviously due to the shorter duration, they give you the opportunity to down pay principal when it matures. But unfortunately, the council isn't in a position where every time it goes along, it actually needs to borrow more rather than repay any. Like as per the draft annual plan that's got out there, I don't think anybody likes the level of debt that it's forecast that us and many other councils are faced with.
Yeah, just to add to that, in the annual plan, we've got the graph of our debt projections versus the LGFA's borrowing limit of 175% of revenue. So you can see from 2029, we're breaching that. So it is something that is going to need to be addressed before 2028.
So it's a really important point that Amanda makes, and I just wonder if everybody appreciates it. But one of the covenants that we have for borrowing money from the LGFA mean that we're not able to borrow any more than 175% of our total revenue. Given the forecast debt profile, we'll be pushing that in 2028. One of the things that we could look to try and defer that is we could have a discussion with LGFA around whether we can deduct our on lending which potentially gives you a small advantage, but it only kicks that can a very short 100 metres down the road. Councillor McCone.
So just take that further, that's 4 years away. Do we need to start planning that now, or is that already in process?
We will be thoroughly investigating all options as part of the long-term plan budgets.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important thing that the PAR continues to get updates on, and the PAR members continue to be proactively involved in how that situation is evolving, because when you look at the graph in the annual plan, it gets pretty serious pretty quickly. And so we do need to spend the time and the resource looking at all potential options. So,
yeah, I'll just chip in here. I don't think anyone has undertaken the exercise yet, but there are still about 50 councils that have done long-term plans for various reasons, just because the water was far less of an impact, or they made some different assumptions, or they have far more resources. But I think as a sector, we're going to, I think, reasonably early on in the next financial year, have a look at all of the debt that the entire sector is projecting ahead. And I think, we're probably better than most, and yet we're going to have issues in 4 to 5 years' time. So, it really does go back to the issue that we had talked about, that this is a sector-wide problem that will need a variety of solutions, and it's whether one of them is actually maybe an unpleasant one, but actually getting those covenants lifted by the LGFA really for the sector as a whole. Maybe one solution. The other is just, a complex problem that is going to need a variety of solutions, not just a single solution. So we need to address those as a sector, not just by ourselves, because we can't come up with a solution that we meet all of the requirements that we will have and yet keep our debt at an affordable level. So, key focus for all of us.
thank you. Are there any further questions on the Treasury report, or some of the breakdown of these tables? Again, Amanda, I think they're really useful in helping explain where those additional borrowings are going. If there are no further questions, there is one. Councillor McCone.
No, all I'd like to do is actually comment on this presentation. It's very easy to follow, and it's great. So thank you.
Thank you. And on that note, then could I please ask for a mover and a seconder for us to receive the Treasury report? Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. I'll now put that to the meeting for carrying. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. And we'll now move through to I'd like somebody to please move and second us going to public excluded. Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. Please, all those in favour of us moving to public excluded? Against? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll now just wait while we move in. I'd like to thank all the members of the public for their time